So says Shernoff.
Welcome, everyone, to So Says Shernoff. I am your award-winning host, Josh Shernoff. Yep, that's right. We did it, and by we, I mean me, and by it, I mean that earlier this month, I was awarded the best host by the International Academy of Web Television. So, yeah, apparently I'm good at this. Now, some of you may have seen my speech online, my acceptance speech. It was heartfelt and truthful. I thanked my family, my friends, and my fans, and I want to take this time to thank you all again. It always means more to prove my supporters right than to prove my detractors wrong. And yes, I have detractors. Me. The guy whose job it is to humorously point out other people's mishaps. I don't get it either. My point is, we live in a time where it is so damn easy for someone to try and cut someone else down with no repercussions. People who like to blow out your candles in hopes that it will make theirs burn brighter. Well, guess what? It won't. Is my show perfect? Yes. But for the sake of this argument, let's say no. I'm not always funny enough. I'm sometimes way too preachy for a satirical wrestling news show. But at the end of the day, I am the best host in the world. New t-shirt available now at SoSaysShernoff.com. All right, this month has been eventful, so let's just jump right in to some headlines. This month saw a number of AEW announcements. Some good, like the debut of Keith Lee. Others not so good, like the departure of Cody and Cody Rhodes. But it was the announcement on February 1st that took us on a 24-hour roller coaster ride. AEW, seemingly out of nowhere, announced Jon Moxley would be facing Brian Kendrick on the next episode of Dynamite. You know how we fans love a good ship jumper, so Kendrick, who only a week earlier was said to be waiting for WWE to release him, would now be popping up in AEW. It's awesome. Well, it was awesome until February 2nd came around and the internet reminded us of some pretty astonishing shoot interviews Kendrick did back in 2011. Take a look.
So basically the theory is the reptilians now, or their descendants, are the ones who are controlling the plane.
Sure, the 13 families, the 13 bloodlines that keep interbreeding, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, I know it was the Bushes who had a different name from before. I don't know, but Stuart Swerdlow has pretty good information, all that online. Lots of it out there. But boy, oh boy, you and I both went to the same 11-hour lecture of David Icke, and he broke it down. It's all there. There's the connections between the Zionists, Illuminati, the destruction of the world, even with the Jewish medics already being flown to Haiti within minutes after the earthquake, prepared, ready to go. I'm not saying the medics were in on it, but I'm saying the Zionists who run things were there to scoop up the body parts. They were there to take eyeballs, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no. You are mistaken. It's actually overwhelming how mistaken you are. Now, it should be noted that Kendrick did issue an apology saying, quote, "I apologize for all the hurt and embarrassment I have caused with my words. These are not my beliefs and never were beliefs of mine, and I crossed the line. I spread the most vile comments without thinking of the damage it would cause. I will live with this regret for the rest of my life. I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused." AEW's Tony Khan issued a statement of his own saying, quote, "We've been made aware of abhorrent and offensive comments made in the past by Brian Kendrick. There's no room in AEW for the views expressed by Brian. We think it's best for all that Brian be pulled from tonight's card as we gather more info. We'll announce a replacement bout ASAP." All in all, this kind of played out exactly how it should. And the next step is to let Kendrick earn back goodwill from friends and fans. It should not just be given to him, but he should be given the right to earn it back. As wild and just truly out there as his beliefs were, or as he put it, non-beliefs, we are living in a time where a lot of people have been saying, or worse, believing some crazy shit. We are living in a time where we have to try and reconcile someone we respect with their views that make us want to smack them. In a humane society, we should do as Tony did and step back, create distance, and gather facts. The party at fault should do as Brian did. Apologize, show remorse, and begin to attempt to make things right. Whether or not he will be able to be forgiven for the horrible things he said remains to be seen. But you know who should really hope he is forgiven? Nia Jax. Because she is about 10 years behind Brian right now, still in the saying stupid shit publicly stage. You see, Fightful ran a story about her getting upset when people say she hurt everyone. Then someone called her out for actually hurting everyone. Then she went on a weird Twitter tirade where she thought she was, quote, smashing trolls, but was really just playing into every single comment someone made about her. Eventually, someone shared a screenshot of some ill-advised post Nia shared about how God made her immune system and it was 99.9% effective against COVID, which is 99.9% true if you ignore all facts. So while Jax continued an argument as irrelevant as her career, she made an interesting claim, saying, quote, "Honey, if you really think that all your favorites don't feel the same as I do, you're sadly mistaken. I know a lot of people in many professional sports that just paid and got a real card from a doctor. So, I mean, this is not a comeback. This is an admittance of knowledge of multiple crimes being committed. So, what is wrong with you? Look, if you want to believe in your weird conspiracy theories, then by all means, go ahead. Get yourself booked on Dynamite and instantly canceled. But the hell is wrong with you to think that any of this is okay? What you seem to lack in your ability to safely perform as a professional wrestler, you also seem to lack in common sense. I'm just glad our paths don't have to cross. Well, me, I guess. Moving on. AEW World Champion Hangman Page tweeted, "I'm tired of bleeding every month." So is half the locker room, but you don't see them bitching about it. Moving on even further, Shane McMahon has apparently left WWE after an altercation or difference of opinion, or both, at the Royal Rumble. Shane was brought in to help book the Rumble, and according to sources that probably know nothing, his ideas were all one-sided in his favor. Either way, he has been removed from the alleged WrestleMania spot WWE had for him. So it looks like Austin Theory will be falling off of something really high now instead. Finally, and probably most importantly to the wrestling world, as I mentioned earlier, Cody Rhodes is gone from AEW. To so many, this is just beyond shocking. Moreover, it's said that he is all but confirmed to be going back to WWE. He may have already shown up by the time this episode airs. I don't know. Many have considered Cody to be the head of AEW. And while he was an EVP, he was not the owner. He was not the boss. And many feel that in the long run, that caused some issues for him. Personally, I think this is great. Competition is what makes a wrestling company thrive. AEW has just as much risk of becoming stale without competition as WWE has over the past 20 years. Now, there will be tons of conspiracy theorists who will say this proves that Vince McMahon secretly owns AEW. And to that, I say, okay. I mean, he doesn't. But if that sparks your interest, let's roll. I'm just curious how Cody will be used upon his return to WWE. Will he be punished for going out and changing the business? Or will his time away be what McMahon needed to see him as more than a guy with a paper bag or a terrible mustache? All that remains to be seen, but one thing that has already been addressed. With Cody's return, a lot of talk has been about the Nightmare Family logo and its copyright. Now, normally you would just make them wear different gear or slightly change a name, but this logo is pretty visibly tattooed on Cody's neck. That has raised a lot of concern. However, thankfully, it's all been dealt with. In fact, I managed to get my hands on these leaked new images of Cody's new and improved neck tattoo. Good luck. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Josh Shernoff from Fight TV, and this is my action figure by Cello Toys. Now you can recreate all your favorite Josh Shernoff moments, like that time Darby Allin wouldn't talk to me, or that time Matt Cardona wouldn't give me the information I asked for.
Right.
Tell us, why are you here?
Well, I'm not going to reveal that information to you, Josh.
With 3 points of articulation and a realistic scale when next to non-retro style figures, and an astonishingly unrealistic scale when next to your favorite Hasbros. Hey, who put that snake on me? Get the Josh Shernoff Fight exclusive action figure by Cello Toys. Available now at SoSaysShernoff.com. Welcome back to the show. I thought with the news of Cody Rhodes leaving AEW that we would take a look back at my interview with him from just 2 months ago on December 20th. Cody was honest and open, and looking back on it with the information we have today, it's very interesting to hear his words. So without any further ado, my interview with Cody Rhodes. He's an executive vice president of AEW, the first ever and current TNT champion, one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling today. Please welcome the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
I really get excited when people say the executive vice president thing. It still kind of tickles me. Three years in, it really, looking at how like the landscape of the industry's changed, the success of the last 3 years, all of it, the whole journey, that's still, when we signed on to be executive vice presidents, I don't think it really, well, of course it wasn't real. Like it didn't hit me until really recently. I feel like it hit me because I don't know. It's like being in office, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Gosh, it comes with its own, they're not, I don't use the term stress, but a very different workload. And I was not adjusted to that workload until I feel like about 6 months ago. And now, yeah, it takes time to go from being one of the boys, and I mean that just in the sense of how we say the boys, the locker room, and then to not, but still wanting to be tethered to, oh, well, we're wrestlers, and that at the end of the day, we're a roster in a locker room, but then there's those who need, management, and those who need structure, and everyone's got their own projects. Tony's got all these projects, Matt and Nick and Kenny and myself. It's just a different workload. And man, I feel like that's not at all, you didn't ask me a question or anything, but I just went on waxing poetic here about it. But it's really, I'm just so glad for the last 3 years. I feel like more than any of the people I managed or tried to make a project or tried to cultivate, I think I've learned more myself about me and my mistakes than I have any of theirs, and that's very good thing. Very good thing.
Yeah, that's a great way to grow professionally and personally.
Yeah.
Look at it, if we look back, I mean, you mentioned 3 years. AEW has not been around for long, and certainly launched right before what would prove to be an incredibly challenging time for everybody, personally and professionally. Take us back to 2019, because we were talking off air about the picture behind you and how much is the same, but how much has changed in such a short amount of time. take us back to how things really started here with AEW. And of course, we're here talking about AEW Plus, which is where if you get AEW Plus, that's where you get all your AEW action. But tell us a little bit, going back to 2019, how did it all start and what has this meant to you so far?
I mean, the origin story of AEW is real. I've said this in a few interviews. It really depends on who you ask, because maybe not everyone's being honest, or maybe they're just hyperbolic in the sense of all wrestlers are. But really, I look at Matt Jackson and Nick, and I look at Tony Khan, and that initial, and this is a public story now, Mike Johnson, our good friend Mike, had set up that meeting, and what happened on that phone call changed the industry, because what we were doing at Ring of Honor was definitely significant, and it was definitely changing and moving the goalpost, and it was leaving the business better than we found it. But the capital, the infrastructure, and the bigger dream, I think my dream at the time was just to do a second All In and perhaps partner with Ring of Honor on it again, or perhaps not. Maybe we fund it, ourselves and fund it somewhere differently. And his picture of coming back, wrestling, returning to TNT, for me, that's just the wildest thing you could possibly hear. Hey, we have an opportunity to be on TNT and the Warner Media networks, and of course on Fight and all these other areas where we can be seen, and I would have a very similar job to the one that my dad had when I was growing up. Just that phone call really just changed everything. And then probably just as important as that phone call, the idea that we would all stay together. I think that's where a lot of, and I say promoters, and I think we all know who we're talking about, but there were other promoters as well. WWE had thrown their name in the hat for all of us. Impact had talked to, everyone had talked to us. And the idea, they all were under the impression that the package would not stay tight. The package would not stay together. No way. There is a prominent wrestling figure who told us that someone would be able to buy us and we wouldn't, stay together. And that's the most important piece to that puzzle. Tony had the infrastructure, he had the foresight, he had the mind, he had the connections, but he also had these amazing free agents all right at the same time. And I tell fans all the time, they one of the coolest things ever is when fans thank you for AEW at these meet and greets and when you meet them. And I always tell them, well, it's a group effort, it's a team effort. Thank Tony, thank the Bucks, thank Kenny. But I also tell them that this will never happen again. Like, the stars are never going to align in this situation where these top free agents, like just a genuine super group of wrestlers, we're all free and we're all going to go here. And taking that leap of faith was what everyone did with AEW. As wrestlers, we took a leap of faith, and as fans, they took a leap of faith. And that very first Double or Nothing in MGM Grand, and then all the way to the October 2nd, the very first Dynamite, it was all a leap of faith. Now it's easy to come to AEW, and the infrastructure's here, and the table's been set, as I've gone on record saying. But in the beginning, it was a big gamble that we all took, all of us, everyone in this conversation, everyone who watches, and God, it paid off. But that it paying off, you want to stay at the table, you want to keep playing, and that's the area where, like I mentioned, the workload earlier, that's what really it is like, how do we keep them as happy as possible, our fans, and how do we keep them coming? And it's really one of the best signs ever is we were just in Dallas for Dynamite, and it was the third time we'd been in Dallas, or Garland to be specific, and the house was bigger this time, and it was bigger the time before that, and so we've grown, and that growth, that's that's 3 years ago. What would have been my goals? We've superseded them, and we hope to keep doing that, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned Double or Nothing, and one of the questions I had for you was, what's your favorite AEW pay-per-view? But I know a lot of people, when they look at AEW, myself included, one of my favorite matches in the entire history of AEW would have to be you versus Dustin. What to you stands out as your favorite AEW pay-per-view? Is it your own match? Is there maybe another match or an event as a whole that you remember, that you look at and you say, hey, that was, I think, AEW so far at its very best?
I actually think it's probably a really good sign that my favorite two pay-per-views, one of them I wasn't on, and that's most recently All Out, where Bryan Danielson joined us, Adam Cole joined us, that pay-per-view, and then of course the one you mentioned, the original Double or Nothing. I know which pay-per-view in my mind maybe I thought was softest. I've never thought a pay-per-view we put out was weak by any means, especially bell to bell. But the original Double or Nothing, that was a feeling like no other in that energy and what this was and what it could be and its constant evolution since. And then to have, 3 years later, All Out, where big free agents, not just the surprises, but the bell to bell content of that show was significant, and I think something for everybody. I know that I'm a little in the minority in terms of what I like in wrestling. I like storytelling and interviews, and I'll use WrestleMania 3 as an example. I like Hogan versus Andre. I also like Steamboat Savage, but I still like Hogan versus Andre more, and I love Steamboat versus Savage. But I know there are wrestling fans, and there are people in management, there are people who like, they like the latter more, and that's what I like about AEW. There really is something for everybody, and you'll hear all these other, luminary wrestling figures tell you can't do that. You've got to have one singular focus, and I think that's BS. We don't have one singular wrestler on the roster. Right. It's a very diverse palette. The table has a lot of different dishes on it, and I think that's real good for fans. I've really disliked in wrestling in the past, and this is across the board, not speaking to anybody specifically, but I've disliked in wrestling when a belt has been tarnished or they've lost their value to a wrestler. Don't be fooled. You talk to a lot of wrestlers. We love our belts. We really, really do. Most wrestlers who are worth their salt have their own display of all the belts they've ever won, and it's a significant thing. It's no different than in Hollywood winning the Academy Award. It's unique in that sense. And
there's a picture that's been going around the internet, and it's a lot of people holding championships 10 years ago in another company. And you look at that picture, and that was, at the time, I remember that was saying, wow, look, this is the future. And now fast forward 10 years, and everyone was right. That was the future. But it's like 90% AEW in that picture now. And I think that really speaks to the talent, the depth of the talent in AEW. But what I find fascinating is that even with that, what was the young up and coming, they're clawing their way to the top, is now what maybe is considered more the established stars. But there's also so much emphasis on the young talent. How do you guys balance that to be able to give everybody that opportunity and that spotlight when the roster is so big?
I'm glad I can answer that question, because if I start talking about that picture, I definitely will get emotional. That picture has been floating around the last few days, and I know Cardona put a post out about it, and I didn't. I chose not to. I'm pretty much off of social at this point, but I chose not to only because I don't know, in my heart I didn't want to cheapen that day, but I will never forget Punk getting everyone together in Philly. I know exactly where it was, right over by catering, and to take that picture for the reason that we weren't sure how long it would be that way. And that was a really good call on his part. I do challenge people. I wish someone, maybe from WWE, if you're out there, if you're any of those photographers who we worked with, if anyone has the actual professional photo, I would love to see it, because I just have the one that was tweeted after, which was cell phone done. But man, that picture was definitely it could tell fortunes, if that makes any sense. There was something special about it. You asked about how we keep the roster and things like that in terms of growing and cultivating and everything. It's very simple. We have to provide layers of content, and Tony has provided layers of content. You just named all the shows. That's how we do it. Dark, for example, right now, Dark is the most fun thing on the planet. Oh gosh, I'm gonna see that back in a clickbait. I'm so terrified of interviews now. But here's I love it. That right now, the Universal Studio where we're filming at. If you've not been to a Dark taping, I really encourage you to go to one. Not only did you get to see, 2 sessions sometimes. Not if you only see the one, that's one thing. But you meet a lot of people. I went around and made my rounds. I'm pretty sure I met every fan in the place, and I'm going to continue to do that whether I'm wrestling or not, just because it's a really cool, unique studio show where you see a lot of the up-and-coming talent, and they're not hindered by the larger booking of big-time Dynamite, of the hour length on Rampage, of the loaded aspect of a pay-per-view. They're really able to kind of grow like on this preserve and learn and figure stuff out, because there is an active audience, a particularly hardcore active audience. But gosh, right now I just have nothing but good things. That's some of the most fun I've had in wrestling. Was the most recent Dark session, and I just sit there in the chair and pretend to do stuff. I just just having a good time, and to see Tony. Tony loves wrestling. If you ever get a chance to sit by him and watch wrestling, you can learn a lot from watching him watch it. But yeah, Dark's amazing, and it gives some of the up and coming talent a chance to fly. Elevation's amazing in the sense that they're in front of our bigger crowds, but they're under somewhat of the duress and stress of kind of a live TV situation, because it is that hour plus right before we go on the air with Dynamite, and that develops a whole different set of skills for a wrestler that they're going to need, because I'm sure you've seen covering the sport, not everyone's cut out for big time TV wrestling. Sure. Some of our favorites can't fathom the time, can't fathom the red light, commercial breaks, PIP, all this crazy stuff that makes being a TV wrestler a special trait. And that's why you see some of the same TV wrestlers dominating, because they're able to do it. But I like that variety of content that we offer, because I think it's best for our roster. Elevation, Dark, Dynamite, Rampage, and now a special Battle of the Belts, 4 pay-per-views a year, opening up into 2022. Perhaps this is not me speaking on the company's behalf. It's more just me saying it would be wonderful to see a couple live events too, not unlike the House Always Wins that we did in Jacksonville, non-televised events that guys and girls can get more reps on and have a good time. And if you ever forget what this is all about, you just need to do one live event, and then you remember the fun that wrestling can certainly be. But yeah, it's going to be a big 2022.
The full interview can be found as part of the Fight and Focus series here on Fight. Thank you, AEW, for setting that up, and thank you to Cody Rhodes for taking the time a few months ago and for always being so much fun to talk to. I personally wish you and Brandy the very best in your next chapter. We'll be right back. That's our show. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/So Says Shernoff. Follow us on social media at So Says Shernoff and at Shernoff Show. Hey, join us over at Patreon, patreon.com/So Says Shernoff. You can get this episode early. You can get Talking with Friends early. You can get behind the scenes footage of the making of these episodes, as well as mini vlogs of my trips to AEW, to NWA, to GCW, to OVW, and so many more. Check out my other shows on Fight. I'm talking about Fight and Focus, and of course, as I just mentioned, Talking with Friends. Talking with Friends is now here on Fight. So check it out. We just dropped a great episode on the state of WWE. So give that a watch or even a listen over at So Says Shernoff's podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. Well, that's it for the award-winning best host in all of web television in the entire world and universe. This has been So Says Shernoff, because that is what Shernoff had to say. We'll see you next time.